Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, inshallah, we'll go ahead and get started. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm going to open this session with an opening dua. Inna alhamdulillahi nahmaduhu wa nasta'inahu wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. My name is Anisa, and I would like to thank everyone for coming, as well as the organizers for the event. This session is called Not Just Feelings, Tying Two Souls to the Sacred. In this session, we will engage in an insightful conversation that explores the beauty and challenges of building a strong and faith-centered marriage. We'll discover what it means to nurture a relationship that's not only fulfilling, but also aligns with Islamic principles, creating a foundation that lasts both in this life and the hereafter. Whether preparing for marriage or seeking to strengthen a current relationship, this session will offer practical guidance and spiritual reflections to help tie hearts to the sacred. Now I would like to introduce our speaker for this session, Imam Omar Tawil. Imam Omar is a graduate of DePaul University with a bachelor's in religious studies and is currently pursuing a master's in Islamic studies and Christian-Muslim relations from the Hartford Seminary. He has pursued his international study of the Islamic sciences with scholars in the Middle East and in the United States. He and his family moved to the Phoenix Valley over 7 years ago. He serves as an imam at the Islamic Community Center of Tempe, Arizona, and a university chaplain for the Muslim students at Arizona State University. You can ask him about his love of bamboo and wood carving and matters of the faith as well. Before I turn it over to Imam Omar Tawil, I'd just like to say questions will be taken at the end after he has spoken, inshallah. And now I will turn it over to Imam Omar.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. بسم الله والحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عبده الذي اصطفى وعلى آله وصحبه المقتدي الفضلاء. أما بعد. We begin all of our gatherings by seeking refuge in Allah from Satan the accursed, and we begin in the name of Allah, the merciful, the especially merciful, and we praise Him, the Lord of the worlds, and we beseech Him and we ask Him to send His peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him, his family, his companions, and those who follow them with excellence until the end of time. Yes, I fool everyone. I know I look like a Brian or a William, but my name is Umar. My family is from Jerusalem, and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, I was born in this country, raised in this country, and also raised in the Middle East as well. So alhamdulillah, when it comes to marriage, I will be talking about this not from a Western perspective or an Eastern perspective, but I will do my best, inshaAllah ta'ala, to talk about it from a principled Islamic perspective and just pragmatism, what works and what clearly doesn't. For instance, the Prophet ﷺ began by advising us when we look for a spouse that we look at 4 primary elements. Number 1, we look at deen, one's practice of religion, one's place in one religion. Where are they in their journey? Are they a new Muslim who still is trying to master, as I heard one convert say, when he became Muslim and he got married and his wife wanted him to pray, he's like, why? I already did the shahada, like it's done. So learning the basic tenets of Islamic aqidah or belief is something that you want to look for in a spouse, and then their character and their practice. Because what is the message of Islam other than beautifying your character? The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, I have not been sent for any other purpose except to perfect noble character. So when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, is talking about deen, he's not only talking about conviction, but he's looking at conviction turning into action. Conviction that one truly believes in the uniqueness of God and that God has communicated this message to prophets and messengers and that we are following that. So the Prophet ﷺ said, when you look for a spouse, if you're looking for a wife or you're looking for a husband, look at their deen. Which then goes to his second thing, look at their character. How much has their deen impacted them? When we think of the religious Muslims in the community, oftentimes we just think of who's going to be at the salah the most in the mosque. Well, I'm an imam, and I'll tell you, some of the people praying behind me most often are some of the people that I would never recommend for marriage. Interestingly, right? Some of the people that I know and I grew up seeing in the mosque have sometimes been some of the most unethical people. Now, I'm not saying that, oh, if they go to the masjid less, then they're more practicing. No. Still, some of the most beautiful human beings I've ever seen in my life have been going to the mosque frequently. So although you have a higher probability of meeting a good man or a good woman who frequents the masjid, that's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. But look at the conviction of a person that they have in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and their attachment in their character and in their being to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you'll see someone who has conviction in La ilaha illallah, they have deen, but then they have conviction in their character. They have good attributes. Thirdly and fourthly, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, look at their lineage. He doesn't mean, oh, are they a descendant of old families and honorable lineage? No, he's look at their family. How does a young man treat his mother and father is very likely how he's going to treat his family. Look at how a young woman respects her parents. It'll show how much she values family. So here's a hint. If you're talking to someone and they're always complaining about their parents, it's probably not a good sign. They're like, oh, this person already views the family as something like an inconvenience rather than a foundation that they're trying to build with you. Why are you trying to get married? Who here is getting married with no intention of ever establishing a family? There are people that do that. They just want companionship, which is great. But a companionship between a man and a woman is still a family. So if you are talking to somebody and they don't view family as first and foremost, I'm sorry, but that's going to be a problem for you in the future. Guaranteed. What does it say about someone who puts family before themselves? That they are selfless. That they sacrifice. That they are willing to work for others. They are willing to serve others. What kind of husband or what kind of wife doesn't want to have somebody who's willing to do something for them? Raise your hand. Exactly. So when you're looking for a husband, when you're looking for a wife, look at how they view family. Look at how they appreciate family, how they honor their mother, how they honor their father, how they even treat their siblings. That will be indicative of how they will treat you. Fourthly, the Prophet ﷺ then said, marry somebody for their money. Oh, everyone's smiling. No, astaghfirullah, we don't do that. Can a woman look at a man for his financial standing and his stability? Absolutely. It's an obligation upon the man to provide. Can a man look at a woman for her financial stability? Absolutely. Maybe it's totally permissible for a man to expect that his wife gives sadaqah to her family. Which then will bring me up to finances later on when we talk about marriage in Islam. Having a financial discussion of what are things going to be expected is going to be important. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ said when it came to looking for a spouse. Look at their deen, look at their character, look at their lineage, their family, and look at their standing socially. Their standing socially. Are they financially stable? Are they educated? You can look at these things as a qualifier or a disqualifier for who you consider for marriage. It's totally okay. Should you always do it? No, because we have the Prophet ﷺ who brought a particular companion to marry a woman, right? And what did the father do? He rejected him. And then the daughter said, oh father, are you rejecting a man that the Prophet ﷺ recommended? I don't care if he's broke. If the Prophet is recommending him to me, that means he's the best of the men. And this is something that we have in our communities. Oftentimes fathers and mothers, they reject for their daughters, or they make it difficult on their daughters because only Abu Bakr came and asked for them. Muhammad didn't come. They have these unreal expectations. They want Hafiz, Alim, Doctor, MD, PhD. They want all of these qualifications. And sometimes women, they want the comforts that their fathers provide for them, not knowing that this young man is probably just starting out his career. Who here amongst us has the story of parents who came here with nothing? Raise your hands. Allah. Allah. I was raised on my father. My father was like, man, I came here, I had $20 in my pocket. I didn't have an apartment that I went to the masjid, I was like, who needs a roommate? And a couple of years later, my father got married. My mother married my dad with nothing. So the question is, are we willing to do the same? Are we willing to do the same? He's speaking the truth. He's nodding his head like, we're not. Let's be realistic. Most of us are not, unfortunately. We want to have that nice car as a wedding gift. We want to have the jewelry. We want to have the nice house to move into, because everyone on YouTube that's an influencer has granite countertops and really high ceilings and beautiful kitchens and mashallah, like they started out that way. Most of the time they're just renting those places, by the way. But it gives you this false image of what a new family should look like. The new family should be dedicated to each other, willing to sacrifice for one another. So, we have the Prophet ﷺ telling us again, deen, character, family background, right? And their social standing. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran? He gives us an objective to achieve in marriage. Very simply, in Surah Al-Rum, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you may find serenity and comfort in the other. Ilayha is not feminine referring to a woman, it's referring to the soul. It's referring to the person you end up with. The other soul that Allah made for you. That you may find serenity and comfort in that person, from that person. And we don't only mean material comforts. We're not talking about, oh, I'm comfortable. I got a really big house. Got a really nice car. It's not talking about comfortable in a material sense. It's that you provide comforts that are immaterial. Material comforts are nice. But Umar ibn al-Khattab said sometimes you should wear some worn out clothes and sometimes you should walk out barefoot because you don't know where Allah is going to take you. Look at our brothers and sisters in Gaza. The most educated city, the highest PhD per capita, right? Very educated part of the world. Doesn't matter your degree. Doesn't matter your financial standing. Everything can be taken away. What then will you do? So find a spouse that you can find comfort in, not get comforts from. That's a very big difference. Find someone that you can find comfort in when Allah tests you. This is the purpose of marriage. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a method. Allah gave us hints of how we should be. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And He has placed between you loving compassion. And this is where we go into it, not just feelings. Being in love is very easy. You fall into it one day. Maybe this morning when you were walking down into the hotel lobby, you're like, oh, there she is. I never knew. You know what would really suck? If you saw her, ya shabab, and she's in a different lecture. You're like, dang it, I wanted her to hear this. It's not just about the looks. It's not just about the feeling. It's about what do you want from life. One of the biggest things that we consistently make the mistake in is thinking that love is enough. And we live in a culture that keeps convincing of this. It's not true. Every movie, every rom-com, they always end up working it out. And you're like, how did that? No, come on, man, that's not real. That's not how you work things out. Wait a minute, they have completely different visions in life. This is so impractical. But what we see from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that there must be loving character between you and there must be an expression of compassion. But I want to squash this thing about feelings. Feelings are good. If you feel nice about somebody, you like the girl you're talking to, you like the man that you're considering, great. It's a great motivator, but it's not everything. It most certainly is not everything. I wouldn't even say it's half. Feelings can be deceitful. And you know what's funny? Who is the greatest Western literary figure in history? Shakespeare. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. What did Shakespeare, Sheikh Zubair, I'm just joking. What did Shakespeare teach us in Romeo and Juliet? What was the lesson? Love triumphs over hatred. Is that what the lesson was? Oh, sister in the back, she understands. She was nodding her head like, Probably the one person who actually read it. What did Shakespeare, because every time I ask this to people, they're like, yeah, love. Romeo, he loved Juliet. They would die for each other. Like, no, they committed suicide out of stupidity and selfishness. What Shakespeare was telling us in Romeo and Juliet is love is not enough. What would have happened if Romeo married Juliet? Nobody remembers? War. They came from two different families of noble birth, and had Romeo married Juliet, war would have broken out. So what is Shakespeare telling you? Your love ain't worth it, man. Really? I sacrifice for my love countless men. They will die so I can be with her. And Juliet says, I will sacrifice for my love countless men. I will widow so many women, orphan so many children, just so I can be with my beloved. You know, we have a beautiful saying in Islam. One of the ulama, Ibn Ata'illah Secondary, he says, Al-bidayat majallatun nihayat, that a beginning is a manifestation of the end. So if Romeo and Juliet were going to get married and it began with blood, it's going to end with blood. And that's exactly what happened. How many people died in the story of Romeo and Juliet? Does anybody know? 5 people died in a span of what, 3 or 4 days? The whole story of Romeo and Juliet is like 3 or 4 days long. And in the 3 or 4 days of Romeo trying to be with Juliet, 5 people died. Like, dude, are you willingly going to sacrifice 5 people? Like, yo, it's worth it. Shakespeare was trying to deliver a message that the entire Western civilization, it seems, in popular culture has gone over their heads. He says, love is not enough. And then all the Disney channels, all the rom-coms and all the movies and all the stories that we're writing are like, no, love is enough. Love will conquer everything, even if he's a vampire, even if he's a werewolf, even if my heart will stop pumping and I'll glitter in the sunlight, which is like the lamest vampire in the history of all mythology. Really? Your skin glitters? This is why I'm in secret, because I'm a diamond. But my point is that we are brainwashed from Disney childhood memories that love is all that is required. And then when we finally meet her or we meet him at a convention like we are right now, you know, there was a hip hop song that Muslims made when I was in high school or middle school. It was called Conventional Love. And it was a brother talking about how he's coming down the escalators, how he sees her, how he starts, back in the day we called it macking on her, right? It's like hitting on her. Like he was spitting the game. And the whole lyric, and then he's talking about how Shaitan is working more than anyone in this situation. Because yes, you want to marry someone that you're attracted to, that you can feel a certain way, that there's a spark for, but Shaitan tries to convince us to get it now, to get it quicker, and to make that the sole purpose of why we're pursuing this woman or this man. And everything has been reinforced by everything we've seen in movies, in music, in popular culture, in the books that we even read. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say, oh, and He created between you ishq gharam. He created between you love, like falling in love, like this passionate love. No, He says He placed between you loving compassion. Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has the best love story I've ever read. And his love of our mother Khadija lives on far after her death, long after her death. Aisha talks about how jealous she is. Man, I'm still competing with the love of this dead woman. When Khadija's sister would visit the Prophet ﷺ and she had a very particular knock, the Prophet would stand, you just spring up like, oh my God, it's Khadija's sister. And they're just similar. But how do you get to that loving relationship? How do you get to that love? You have to be a loving person. You have to be a loving person who's willing to meet a woman, be with a woman, to meet a man, to be with a man that you can be loving with, even when you're angry at the person, even when you're upset. And there has to be a source of compassion at the bedrock of your relationship. Because we all want to be forgiven by Allah. We all want to have the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how then can we not be merciful and forgiving to our own family members? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the best of you are those of you who are best to your families. And I'm the best to his family. And then he looked to the men. And he says, the best of you are those of you who are best to their wives. And I am the best to his wife. So what we have is character is going to be the thing saving your relationship. Being in love and having strong, passionate emotions for one another might save you as well, but not alone. And this is where I have to say this now. The primary thing that will get you to find someone where all of that I mentioned can work with, their character, their lovingness, their selflessness, their sacrifice, their compassion, their willingness to make a marriage work out, you first have to have a shared vision. Where on earth do you want to be? Where are you going? If you want to marry a woman or a man for their looks and their charisma and how flamboyant in anything that you may like that they may be, like they're attractive to you, they got this aura, and you want to marry them. I was using that word actually very traditionally. I wasn't using it according to Gen Z. And I'm using charisma. Yes, I know it's Riz. I do my research. SubhanAllah, like you guys probably think of me what I thought of all the other uncles when I was growing up. I'm like, these guys are lame, man. Using 80s references. So sometimes I go on Reddit just to do homework. Like, what are the kids talking about today? But all of those things will be helpful, but they will be useless if you don't have a vision. What do I mean by a vision? What do you want out of marriage? And where are you going to be? What do you plan for yourself to be? Where do you plan to be 15, 20 years from now? Sisters, are you going to put your career before your family? Men, do you accept a woman putting a career over her family? That's a conversation. And if you don't have that conversation, it's a bumpy ride. Are there women who want to pursue amazing careers? Yes. Is that haram? No. But you have to find a man that is willing to take that. Because is it an obligation for a woman to work and provide for her family? And do a lot of women look highly upon a man that they may earn more money than? No. Overall. You might individually, but overall, culturally, all around the world, women are seen as the primary caregiver in a household. And it is worldwide uncommon, right? If you look at the entire population of planet Earth, it's 8 billion. If you average it out, it is uncommon for a woman to be the sole earner of the family. It's usually the man. And even as Muslims, a man is sinful if he can't provide for his family. Correct? A man is lacking in his duty if he can't provide for his family. So, if a man wants to raise a family and wants to have children, can he have a preference of saying, I don't want a strong career-oriented woman. I want a strong woman, but I want her to be educated, obviously. Most men, I think, are sensible enough to say that. I want her to be educated. I want her to maybe have a career. Maybe I won't earn enough, and maybe she'll need to work just to help us scrape by. Maybe a part-time career or a full-time career when the kids are older. Allahu a'lam. But that's a conversation. Sisters, that's a conversation. I've known women who say, you know what, I don't really care about my career. I want to go straight into motherhood. How many of us judge that? And I've known men to say, you know what, I don't want a career-oriented woman. I want a woman that I can have a family with as soon as possible. And I've seen the exact opposite. What's my point? What is your vision? And how does it match with a potential spouse? Do you want to have kids in your 20s? Do you want to have kids later in your 30s? Do you not want kids at all? That's a vision. And in your vision, it's totally okay for you to have preferences. Can I give you an example? I knew a man who said, actually I know many men who say this, I don't want to marry a doctor. Sisters who are pursuing MDs, don't feel bad. You don't prefer some men, right? You have your own preferences and your own biases. You have every right. Men, you too. You have every right to have your preferences and your biases. Many men tell me, I don't want to marry a doctor. But I knew one such man who was talking to a sister and she was in medical school. And he was like, man, she's worth it though. Let me pursue this. He liked the way she looked. He liked her family. He loved her deen. He loved her akhlaq. And he was like, this is looking good. Every conversation he had with her, he's like, all right, I think I'm going to marry a doctor. But he had a plan. He was like, I want to be a father before I'm 30. She already went to a bachelor's, master's, and then into med school, and then she wanted to do residency and fellowship, psychiatric medicine. And he was like, dang, sister, like, you're going to be done when you're 30. She was like, yeah. He was like, okay. I'll be like 32. I'll push it off. What's he doing? Compromising. He's negotiating his preferences. But then he said, wait, so by the time you become a psychiatrist, like, are you going to work? Because, like, you want to have kids by the time you're 30 and I'll be 32 and I'm already pushing off my plan. I want to be a father by the time I'm 30, but I'm willing to wait. He's like, no, we'll have kids. He's like, who's going to raise them? I don't want to put my kids in daycare. Especially with what you see. You see what they're doing in daycare? The rainbow aqidah being gemmed. MashaAllah. But he's like, I want to raise our children like me and you. She's like, oh, my mother will watch. He's like, I don't want that. I'm not getting married so that my mother-in-law and my mother can raise my kids. I'm getting married so we can raise our kids. And guess what? She didn't back down. Neither did he. Assalamu alaikum. Why? Because that's a potential issue for resentment in the future. Better cut it off now. As attached as you might get to that sister, as attached as you might get to that brother, cut it off now. Because your visions and your preferences of life don't match. And the odds of that working out are astronomical. And here's the thing, everyone thinks that they're in that astronomical odd. Every time I meet a guy, every time I meet a sister, Sheikh, I want to talk to you about someone. Let me guess, they're different. Yes, they're unique. He's different than all of the men. She's different than all of the women. I'm like, here we go. It's never worked out. Have a plan, have a vision. So men and women, create non-negotiables for yourselves. What are the things that you want for yourself in your marriage, in your family life, that you're unwilling to let go? Can I tell you something that's funny? Every time I ask young men, they're like, Sheikh, help me out, I'm trying to get married. Or a sister comes up to me, Sheikh, do you know any good men for me? Like, I'm like, what are you looking for? The sister's always like, I'm not judging you. They always bring up finances as the first thing. And brothers, I am judging you. Brothers always mention hijab. Oh, she has to wear hijab. But I look at both men and women, I'm like, it's funny, neither of you mentioned salah. Yeah, No one's mentioning their connection to Allah. Is like, yo, I gotta marry somebody who has their 5 salawat down and they're committed to their connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, money is nice. Yes, hijab is nice. You know what? Hijab is a secondary requirement. Yeah, money is a secondary requirement that I'm not negotiating on. But the first thing that should be on your mind is your connection to Allah, and that should shape the vision that you have for yourself and your family. That ought to be the thing that you are shaping how you're going to talk to this woman. And here is a book that I recommend everyone read, especially if you're talking to someone right now. Especially, and buy them and you a copy. It's called Before You Tie the Knot. Before You Tie the Knot. It's written by 2 family therapists, and one of them is a Muslim scholar. And he deals with divorces all the time. So he's drawing from his experience. What didn't work? Why didn't it work? And what did they not talk about? There's even another one from one of our local, aunties. Her name is Dr. Anisa Nadir. She was a professor at ASU in social work. And she wrote a book called Before the Nikah. A lot of people start having these discussions after the nikah. I'm like, it's too late. And subhanAllah, here's a wisdom. A man came to Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the Sahabi. He came to the Amir al-Mu'mineen and he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, my wife just delivered my son. What are my responsibilities to him? He's like, you're late. You should have came to me before you met her. You don't prepare for marriage after the wedding ceremony. You don't prepare for marriage and start working on your marriage after you get into your first fight or after you have your first child or after things start to hit the rocks. No, you got to start envisioning where you want to go before you even talk to her. And if you are talking to her or you are talking to him, start strategizing right now. Again, before tying the knot. Imam Muhammad Majid, you can look it up on Amazon right now. It'll show up. And Sister Sarah Abu Gdairi, they're both licensed family therapists, and one of them is an imam of a very prominent mosque in America, and he's seen all of the problems in the Muslim community. And she has too. And they've surveyed their experiences, and they are now putting it in a book. You have to talk about things, not just, hey, what music do you like? Do you like Yuna? Right? And here's the thing, a lot of people, and I'll end with this. A lot of people think that you have to have everything in common. You have to like the same animes, the same movies, the same video games, the same art, the same literature, the same hobbies. You don't. You have to have a shared vision. Because if you don't got that, good luck. Inshallah.
Okay, so now we're moving into the Q&A portion of our session. If anyone has any questions, they can raise their hand.
Yes. If you have unrelated questions, talk to me later. But here, I'll say this. Imam al-Ghazali says something that I love. Imam al-Ghazali says there are 2 types of people in this world. Those who have questions and those who are in denial. All of you guys are in denial. You know what's funny is that if I was alone with the guys, wallahi, 1,000,000 hands would be up. And I'm sure if I was alone with the sisters, oh, I got questions. So ask. Ask. We know the questions are there. Yes, sister. Oh, we got to get the mics. We got to get the mics. Wireless. Bismillah. She's over there in the center.
Thank you, Imam. My name is Marwa. I want to ask because you mentioned that the first, beside share vision, we also should know about their deen, how they practice, and how their connection with Allah. My question is if we have certain amaliomi or a daily practice that we have, should we also look for someone who have similar how we practice as a Muslim, or we just seek for the obligatory things?
You should start with the obligatory. If they do more, then that's good. So I know of a very close friend of mine. He has his fard down. And he does the minimal amount of sunnahs. He does it. He goes to Taraweeh in Ramadan. He'll pray a qiyam when it's convenient. But he does his obligations. But I'll tell you something about him. I think he's one of the best people I know, period. Better than some of the tullab ilm, the Sufis even, the people who are worshipping Allah all night, doing dhikr and doing all of these awrad. But I truly believe, and I'm saying this, and I know a lot of scumbags and I know a lot of saints. In my opinion, in my estimation, amongst all of the people that I've ever met in my life, he's one of the top in terms of character, in terms of integrity. So the foundation is where you start. Look at those nice things. Does he do dhikr? Is he reading Quran? Does he have a wird? Is he connected to the masjid? So this brother, he reads his Quran every day, a little bit. Not not an impressive amount, nothing to show off. Wallahi, you'd be like, that's it. He does some dhikr, but guess what? His heart is attached to the masjid and he's a good man. And I've seen him in some of the most difficult situations. He's one of my closest friends. I've seen him in some of the most difficult situations I've ever seen men be put in. And the dude comes out, MashaAllah. Allah has constricted him like many men haven't been constricted in their lives. And this man has been patient and has endured. So, yes, adhkar, awrad, extracurricular activities in the deen are all great. But I also know many people who do that, and I would never recommend them for marriage. I would never recommend, like there are men, wallahi, every mawlid I've ever been to, I see them there. Every dhikr session, all the conferences, they're there. And wallahi al-azim, there have been men that are like that. And a sister says, what do you know about this guy? And they're like expecting me to say amazing things. I'm like, I wouldn't marry him to my sister. They're like, but I'm like, hey, I know what I know. If you want details and you won't be able to unlearn it, trust me. If my sister were single, she's not, alhamdulillah, and she's married to a great man, I wouldn't even consider this man. But he's at the masjid all the time. But he's doing dhikr all night. He's at every qiyam. Same thing with the sisters, by the way. I'm not singling you out, brothers. Same thing, but character. If someone's doing dhikr, reading Quran, doing all of the sunnah, going to all of these scholarly gatherings, but their character is trash, it's not working. So that means there's something here that we're not seeing. Inshallah. But it's a good start. The foundation is the obligations. Are they handling their obligations correctly? And do they fear Allah in everything that they do? Let's play ping pong. So that was a sister question. Let's do a brother's question. Oh, MashaAllah, brother, raise your hand. You can stand up so he can find you.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How do you determine someone's level of deen?
How do you determine someone's level of deen? It starts with the obligations. It starts with the obligations and then ask about people's character.
Like people that know them.
People that know them. Brothers, there's a very pragmatic reason for you to have a good relationship with your local masjid. The imam will see you. And by the way, sisters, call the local imams of the masjid that the brothers claim to go to. I've been called multiple times, like, hey, Sheikh, what's it called? Sister from Houston, I'm her brother, I'm her father, so-and-so from Phoenix says he knows you. I'm like, who? And they name the name, I'm like, don't know the name. Show me a face, I might know his face, because I'm terrible with names, forgive me, but I'm excellent with faces. I'm like, I ain't never seen this man in my life. I've never seen this man in my life. Like, no, but he says he's close. I'm like, look, if he's close with me, then I know him. I'm like, this guy's a liar. Canceled. Immediately. No longer an option. So, the more people know you and your character, brothers and sisters, number one, you're being tested by yourself, even without marriage. You're being tested. Your deen is improving. But if people don't know you, then you're probably like you know how a lot of people are getting married online, and that's totally cool, that's totally kosher? It is, as long as you're not hiding things and it's open and transparent. But the more you get to know somebody, the higher the chances of that marriage actually working out. Sometimes with like arranged marriages or recommended marriages through the auntie system, right? Or the marriages that are done online. You don't really get to know that person enough, and it's a nightmare. So how do you get to determine one's deen? What are their obligations like? Are they doing it? And what do people say about them? Because like I said, someone could be going to all of the gatherings of the mashayikh, of the scholars, sitting in all of these majalis of dhikr, and then they treat people terribly. They treat people terribly. They're rude. They're arrogant. They're cocky. They're unethical. And believe me, I have friends that I've grown up with that I thought highly of. And then I started learning things about them. I'm like, yo, man, I knew they had their flaws, but dang. But they're the people of dhikr. It's not changing in here and it's not manifesting on your actions, then there's something deeper that's wrong. But yeah, assess deen through their obligations and how they interact with people. Because with people is where you fear Allah. Why is marriage half your deen, guys? Is it because I'm incomplete until I have the other half? Is that was the Prophet saying that they're soulmates? No. If they were soulmates, then divorce would be haram. Why is marriage half your deen? Because half of your deen is aqidah, right? Belief and ibadah, right? The other half is your character. And who's going to know your character better than your wife? Who's going to know your character better than your husband? So, when you get married, your deen gets put to the test. Your patience, your charitableness, your sacrifice, your love, your compassion, your kindness, your gentleness will be put to the test. Inshallah. Ping pong, sisters. We have one in the front over here. Someone raised their hand like last night. You got to get to it early. The guy has a long way to walk. He's getting his steps in, mashallah.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Asking for a friend, but I feel like everybody will
Oh,
have
it's always
this
a friend, for
question.
sure. Yeah. I'm asking for a friend, mashallah.
Getting married is quite scary, and I feel like with a lot of peer pressure around us, how do you know like you're ready to get married, or how would someone prepare to make sure they get ready?
This is
to
a good
get married?
question. Ultimately, when you start going through the process, you may think you're ready to get married, but how you're feeling and how you're engaging with the other person when you're going through that process I can tell you from personal experience, I thought I was ready to get married. I was talking to this sister, and then I was in Jordan, and my father was like, hey, we're going to go see another person. I'm like, wait, but I'm talking to somebody else. He's like, I'm like, all right. I'm going to say no. I already planned it. But he's like, Omar, be sincere. You have no commitment to that other sister. You're not engaged. You're just exploring, which I disagree with. I think men, if you're talking to one woman, talk to one woman at a time. Stop trying to have this web of options. Which one do I go to? Which one do I pick? Because you want to know, brothers, why that's wrong? If a sister was doing that, you'd call her names. Don't be a hypocrite. Don't be a hypocrite. Sisters, I know you guys are doing it too, so slow down. Acting like the brothers are always the ones that are all, like, I will spit venom equally. I will spray it evenly on both sides. I'm a true feminist. So, I was talking to a sister while I was studying overseas. My father came to visit, and he was like, there's someone I want you to meet. I prayed istikhara, and I felt like a sickness in my heart. I'm like, this is not going to go well. And then I went through the process. I met the girl's father, mother, her 8 uncles, her aunts, the whole clan. I was like, Ya Latif, how long is this process? And I see the sister, and you know what? I liked everything about her. But I realized something. That sickness in my heart wasn't a distaste for the sister or the process. I wasn't ready. I discovered I thought I was ready. I was 21. I was studying ilm. I was overseas. I was gaining all this knowledge. I'm like, yeah, man, my deen is going great. Oh, I'm on cloud 9. Oh, I'm ready to get married. I don't want to go back to the West where all the fitan are. But then when I started going through the process, I was like, dude, I'm not ready for this. Ultimately, all of us are going to have different ways of finding out how we're ready. But when we think we're ready, maybe we should be a little bit humble. I wasn't ready until 3 years later. And that's when I met my wife, alhamdulillah. Any other questions? It's subjective, sister. I can't tell you. But I can tell you how to prepare. I know it's for a friend. Brothers. Oh, we got some brothers in the back. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
wa barakatuh. You mentioned love is not the end all, but let's say the situation is reversed. Everything checks. Sister's on his deen, the brother's on his deen, everything works out, families like each other, but the spark is not as intense and they both feel like, you know what, everything checks, but I don't really feel some sort of connection. You go ahead and just, go with it, because I know there's been success stories based off that as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of our parents, things is checked off the box. And like my father, for example, he didn't really meet my mother until, a few weeks. I mean, back then, traditionally, he didn't really meet them for a long time like we do now today. But everything checked. And alhamdulillah, I'm here today.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
So what do we do about those kinds of situations?
That's a very good question. The brother has asked a very good question, mashallah. I grew up with that. Brother's asked a very good question. Not necessarily. Everything checks, but there's no spark. Do you go ahead with it? Not necessarily. I would heavily emphasize that there being an attraction. If there's somewhat of a spark, if there is a spark, and there's attraction within that spark, I would say, and you have, like, you're not comparing them to another previous experience. By the way, it's very likely that the woman you marry, the man you marry, did feel something about someone else before. Prepare yourself for that. Astaghfirullah, they have a heart? Oh no, oh no. They're attracted to the opposite gender? Just be prepared for it. Be prepared for it as men, be prepared for it as women, and know that you have done everything you tried to by pleasing Allah and going about it the right way. But I'm just trying to say, like, you're not comparing her to someone else. You're not comparing him to someone else. But everything is in alignment. It's perfect. And there is attraction and there's common interests. I'd say go for it. If there is no attraction, don't do it. Man, I've seen this so many times with brothers and sisters. And ultimately my question is, so everything's perfect? Yeah. You attracted to him? No. Are you attracted to her? No. Like, how much? Like 0. And I'm like, guys, stop exaggerating. No, like, I'm telling you, like, nothing. So I developed a litmus test when I've seen people go through this. If you marry this person, will you ever think of yourself as having been capable of getting something better? Because that's how the devil will come at you. That's how the devil will come at you. You're with your husband, you're with your wife that you married that you had no attraction to, but everything else was great. And you're fighting them, and then the devil inserts this waswasa where you're like, man, I could have gotten something. Terrible thought. Could have done better. Terrible thought. Can it work out? Yes. But can you resist such a thought? Can you fight such an egotistical thing that shaitan will entertain you with? He will entertain you with that thought. So, I'd say it's subjective. My answer is conditional upon other factors like attraction. Because attraction can save a marriage. Attraction can create and spark love like it's never been known before. So you have to be attracted to your spouse. They don't have to be a supermodel. And I'm not even, and I'm genuinely telling you that when I've spoken to women or I've spoken to men who had zero attraction to a potential option, they literally are like, I see them and I just think, oh, that's a female, that's a male. Like, there's nothing about them that entices me. I'm not saying wait out for that Instagram handsome man who edits his pictures, as we do. Or that Instagram sister who edits her pictures. Don't worry, we know you do too. It's not like that. And don't wait for that. Find someone with deen, find someone with character, find someone that you're attracted to, find someone that you have enough common interest in, but more importantly, that you share a vision of where you want to go with your family. But don't go into a marriage thinking that I'm going to marry this woman, I'm going to marry this man who's I'm not attracted to whatsoever because I'm so pious. It has nothing to do with your deen. It has nothing to do with your deen. I know a man who wanted to marry a niqabi. I'm like, have you seen her? No? You probably should. No, man, I just want her heart. And I was like, you know what? I really think you should see her, and you can request according to the madhabs that if a woman does wear niqab, she doesn't take her hijab off, but she can show her face for marriage. And then he She showed her face and he was no longer interested. I'm like, see, you dodged a bullet. Sisters, I'm being practical. I'm not trying to insult the sister. I'm saying he wasn't attracted to her. You can't blame the guy. This is just why I can't blame you. Like, let's say you see this guy and during COVID, right? And you saw him online, you saw him, the lockdown was over, people started seeing each other, people were going out, and you're like, mashallah, he's so handsome, he's so great. And then we get safe, and then everyone starts taking off your mask, you're like, oh, mashallah. Okay, so it's the same thing. Sisters, I would never recommend that you marry a man that you have zero attraction to, just as I would recommend that a man never marry a woman that he has zero attraction to. And everyone has different tastes. But it's a very practical piece of advice. If everything lines up, if everything is perfect, and there is no spark, but there is attraction, it depends on the person. If there's zero attraction, it still depends on the person. Can you resist those temptations and those thoughts? Inshallah. Another one from a sister, inshallah, and then we'll be done.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Do you have any insights on multicultural or multiracial tensions of a union or a potential union?
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. That's a very good question, and something that we don't like talking about because it kind of makes our parents look racist, doesn't it? I'll say this. Are there racist Muslims? Absolutely. If your parent doesn't want you marrying outside of your culture, does it make them a racist? No. A lot of multicultural marriages are hard. Can I give you an example? I knew a brother who was married to a Malaysian woman. What are Malaysian women like when they're upset? Quiet. In America, when a woman is quiet, what does that mean? No, I see red. It's blood. It's like she's super angry. So, one thing that they would constantly experience was fights. Because when his wife wasn't she was slightly annoyed. Malaysians are a quieter culture than Americans, right? Americans are loud and in your face, blah, 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 blah. You can tell. But he would always take his wife's silence for why are you so angry with me? She's like, I'm not. I'm just a little upset. He's like, no, you're not. You're lying to me. You're so angry. And she's like, I'm really I don't know what to tell you. I'm not angry. I'm I'm annoyed. And it created this rift. People communicate emotions differently. So it's not always a matter of racism. Sometimes it is. Sometimes your parents have been around the block more than you have, which they have. Sometimes your parents have lived life more than you. They have. And they know that, hey, cross-cultural marriages or cross-cultural interactions, sometimes there's a great opportunity for misunderstanding. We have to pick up our kids. They charge you $10 for every 5 minutes. A brilliant plan. So, cross-cultural can be difficult. The question becomes, are you the type of person that can handle that or not? I knew a man recently, head over heels for a girl, of course. But he came to me with a very responsible question. He's like, Sheikh, from Lebanon. I was like, yeah. This girl I'm talking to, her father is a convert, and her mother is Indian. But her mother was born in a Western country. She wasn't born overseas in India. She was born in a Western country, and almost all of their life has been in the Western world. My parents are both immigrants, and I've been raised with Arabic as the language at home. She's been raised with English. Yes, she has some aspects of Indian heritage and culture, but it's largely American. He's like, I'm wondering, is this he's like, I like her deen, I'm attracted to her, her character is to the other brother's question, she met everything except one thing. He's like, yo, we're from two different worlds. And he's like, and I don't know. This is a man who's truly thinking ahead. look at this point that he said. I don't know how much of an Arab I am. And if I marry this girl and I have these cultural things about me that she'll be like, who the hell do you think you are? He's like, will that create a tension? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, it will. He's like, that's a very good idea. You don't know how Arab you are. And I started listing off the examples. You might come home, and he has a very stressful job. You might come home expecting your favorite Lebanese dish, and you got turkey sandwich. I'm being honest because, like, she came to potlucks with turkey sandwiches. Like, it's not an insult. I'm just saying, she's American. I love turkey sandwiches. Just needs hot Cheetos, and it's good. But she has a very different upbringing than him, almost to the point where he's like, and then when I was talking to him about this, he's like, dude, I'm realizing I'm very Arab. Like, I'm so Arab. I don't know if that would work out. And he didn't go through with it. So he's trying to answer a very honest question. How much do I love my own culture that I'm going to expect it every day when I come home? Sisters, the same thing. How much of your culture are you committed to that you're like, you know what, I don't want a man who does things differently than how my father or the men that I expect to act as men, because men act differently across cultural boundaries, right? And you might be attracted to a man, or you may have an idea of what a man or the role of a man is according to where you come from, according to what you've seen from your father, your brothers, your uncles. So marrying a man from a culture that you have no relation to will be difficult. It will be different. It will not be the same. Prepare for that. If you're mature enough to deal with that and expect that, it'll work out. Do I know plenty of multicultural marriages that have worked out? Yes. But you know what all of them have said? Damn, my parents had a point. Even the ones that work out, they're like, man, it's hard. They're in love. They're over the moon for one another. But you know what they all say? It's not easy. It's difficult. My parents were right. Like, I thought my parents were racist. No, they're just wise. And then they start respecting their parents more. Oh my God. I guess they were educated and they did know a thing or two. So yeah, cultural marriages are good. Cultural marriages, there should be no racist reasons why we reject a man or why we reject a woman. But if you have a preference for your own culture because you know that that's what you'll be patient with, that's what you know how to handle, that's what you know you can do, and there's nothing wrong with that, do it. But they are difficult. And if you don't have a mature personality where you can compromise and you can negotiate and you can resolve conflicts, it's going to be a bumpy ride and it might not work out. Inshallah it does. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakumullah khairan, everyone, and thank you, Imam Omar, for your time and knowledge. So I'm just going to provide like a brief summary of what we discussed today. So we talked about how to choose your spouse. So looking at their deen and character, looking at their lineage, how much they value family, and how do they prioritize their family. We talked about financial stability and looking at one's social standing. We talked about how in the Quran it says to find serenity and comfort in each other, providing comfort in the immaterial aspect of it. And it's not just about feelings, it's about what we want for life, because love is not enough. Feelings are a great motivator, but they're not everything. It's important to have this source of compassion at the foundation of your relationship and being merciful and forgiving. And it's also important to talk about your vision and how that matches with your potential spouse. Creating non-negotiables, like you said, and if you guys want to check out the book Before You Tie the Knot, before tying the knot.
Muhammad Majid and Sister Sarah find it. Tie the knot.
On Amazon, right? So that was a little summary. So to our audience, thank you all for joining us. We hope the session brings some insight into your journey of building a strong and faith-centered marriage. I'm going to go ahead and close our session with a closing dua. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wal asr innal insana lafi husr إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.